One of my very first memories, I must have been between 18 and 24 months old, was sitting on my dad's shoulders at a Mardi Gras parade. We lived in New Orleans for about a year and a half while my dad was a clerk for a federal judge down there. And so we enjoyed Mardi Gras. And ever since then, Mardi Gras and Cajun food has been a big part of my family's traditions and history. Every Mardi Gras, I throw a big Mardi Gras party for my neighborhood, for my friends, and I get to cook what is probably my favorite cuisine. I don't know why, but Cajun food, Creole food, and there is a difference, it makes sense to me. And I want to share some of that with you today. I'm going to do something that, it's a recipe, a version of this I've never made, and there's some interesting bits to it. But I read the recipe and thought, hey, that's interesting, I'll give that a go. So we're making Shrimp Creole. My earliest memory of this dish was at some party. I don't know if it was my mom or somebody else who made this dish, and I don't know whether it was by accident or on purpose, but they put a lot of cayenne pepper in. And so with my little mouth, I shoveled in a bite, and it just cooked my mouth. And so ever since then, well, for a long time, Shrimp Creole in my mind was this unpleasantly spicy dish. But as an adult, I decided to try it again and realized, hey, that was just a fluke. It's a very tasty dish. Not my favorite Cajun dish. My favorite Cajun dish is crawfish etouffee, which I'll maybe make in the future, but it's a lot more involved than this. And, you know, I live in Utah, so I make it with shrimp. So let's get started. Now, the very first step in pretty much any Cajun cooking is you have to make a roux. And a roux is just a mixture of flour and some kind of fat that you cook. And the more you cook it, the more color it gets, the more flavor it gets, but the less thickening power it has. If you just do a very light roux, it's going to have a lot of thickening power. You might end up with a kind of a stodgy sauce. But if you cook it, you're going to get more flavor and the sauce won't be as thick. We're going to take this one fairly dark, not too burnt, because you can burn it. You can take it too far and then it's burnt and it's just useless. We're going to use an interesting technique that I've read about. I've never done it. I've made roux the traditional way over the stove. I've made roux, interestingly, in the oven, where you basically just roast the flour to get the color and flavor that you want. But this time, I am going to make it in that evil machine, the microwave, which in my opinion has only one legitimate purpose in the kitchen, and that's to boil water for something else. But we're going to use the microwave. This recipe that I read said it works just as well as anything else, and it'll speed the process up. So what we're going to do, I have here a microwave safe Pyrex bowl. I've got 2/3 cup of flour in it. I'm going to take 2/3 cup of vegetable oil. I'm just using a canola oil, but you can use anything you want. And there's our 2/3 cup of oil in with the flour. And I'm just gonna use my little whisk to stir that up, get it kind of smooth. And once this is stirred up and smooth, I'm gonna put it in the microwave for 6 minutes on high. That looks good. So, in we go, into the microwave. So it's been 6 minutes, and this is interesting to me. It definitely is changing color. What we're supposed to do now is give it a stir and put it back in for 30 to 60 more seconds and take it to a mahogany color. Right now I'd say it's kind of a light walnut color. We want to take it darker than that. It does smell like a normal roux, which is really kind of interesting to me. So I'm going to put that back in the microwave and see you in a few seconds. Now the recipe that I read said 30 to 60 seconds to get it to a mahogany color. That didn't get me there. So I ended up doing it in 15-second increments, 30-second increments, and total I went 2 minutes. And now we have a nice, that's what I was looking for. Right when I stirred it, it looks great. This is the color I was looking for. It's a nice dark brown, lots of flavor. It's not going to thicken up too much when we put the rest of the ingredients in it. So the next step is we're going to add our vegetables. And if you know anything about Cajun cooking, you know two things. You start with a roux, and then you use the Trinity. In French cooking, it's mirepoix, which is celery, onion, and chopped carrot. In Cajun cooking, it's the Trinity: celery, onion, and green bell pepper. So I have 2/3 cup of each, chopped fairly small, because when I cook this in this roux, I want these vegetables to basically break down. No big chunks of vegetable. You just want the flavor. You don't want a big chunk in the sauce. So we're gonna mix in our, listen to that hiss. We're gonna mix in our celery, our green bell pepper, and our chopped white onion. Now, in addition, this is just kind of more flavor. You don't have to use this, and it's not usually used in the Trinity, but a lot of times there is some chopped green onion or scallion. So that's also 2/3 cup. So have you seen the recipe so far? It's 2/3 cup flour, 2/3 cup oil, 2/3 cup of each of these vegetables. And we're going to just mix this in. And those cold vegetables are going to cool that roux down, so as we continue to cook here in the microwave of all places, the roux should not burn. It should just stay this nice color while those vegetables break down. Maybe I shouldn't have used a whisk. Oh well, there we go. All the vegetables in there. Back in the microwave for 5 minutes on high. Alright, so I was watching the microwave and things were getting a little too far done too quickly. So I ended up just leaving it in there for about 3 minutes. It's a nice dark roux. I think it's going to have great flavor. You don't want to take it too far. If it turns too dark, you've burned it, you've burned the flour, and you'll have those acrid, burnt flavors. And that's not good. So here's the roux. Oh, and one more thing. I forgot, before I put it in the microwave, you need to put in about a teaspoon or so of minced garlic. So I stopped and put that in, and so there's a teaspoon of minced garlic in there. So this is the roux. Now, what I read says you're supposed to pour off any oil that might have developed on top, that's loose on top, and I just don't have any. But you are, to finish it off, to add 2/3 a cup of water and just stir that until it's smooth. I don't know. I'll see how this tastes. I mean, it looks right. And it is easier, but you do have to be careful, just like with any roux, because you don't want to burn it. You also have to be careful, because I've heard this referred to as culinary napalm. You don't want to get it on you. It burns and burns and burns. So that's our roux. And it has accepted all that water. It's thickened up a bit. And we are ready to use it to make the Shrimp Creole. So here's my pot that I'm going to cook the actual Shrimp Creole in. This roux could be used for any number of Cajun or Creole recipes. And I'm just going to put this, the whole thing, into my cast iron Dutch oven. Just get that in there, all those vegetables and flavor. And just put that to the side. And now, this is really easy. That was the hardest part of this recipe, making that concoction. Now we're just going to go to our sauce. We're going to finish out the sauce. And it starts with an 8-ounce can of tomato sauce. And we'll just get this open. This is a really cool can opener. It doesn't leave any sharp edges. It kind of separates the lid from the can so that you don't have any sharp edges. If you have kids around the kitchen, it's great. So we'll just dump that in, 8 ounces of tomato sauce, and 6 ounces of tomato paste. The whole can of tomato paste. Just going to get this open. Probably need a spoon to scoop this out. There we go. Let me grab a spoon and just scoop all of that tomato paste in. Just a bit more. There we go. All the tomato paste is in. And now we're going to put in a half teaspoon of salt. There's a half teaspoon of salt. A half teaspoon of thyme leaves. Now I wouldn't use ground thyme. You'll have too much thyme flavor. But a half teaspoon of just dried thyme leaves. There we go. And we need a half teaspoon of ground up bay leaves. And to do that, I just have a little mortar and pestle. I don't think you need to have a mortar and pestle. I'm just going to put my bay leaves in there and just kind of break them up. Oh, that smells good. That really releases all that oil from the bay leaves. And I think that's probably about a half teaspoon. That's the thing about cooking. Not so much baking, but cooking, it's not really an exact science. You just do how much you think would taste good for what you like. So there we go. The half teaspoon of ground up bay leaves. And now I need a cup of water. So there's my cup of water. Put that in. And finally, 1/8 of a teaspoon of cayenne pepper. Just 1/8 of a teaspoon in this whole pot. So it will have a little bit of a kick, but it's not going to knock your socks off. And if you really are nervous about cayenne pepper, just leave it out. You can put some black pepper, you can put some white pepper in. They use a lot of white pepper in Cajun cooking. It'll still give you a little bit of heat, but it's not going to blow you off the planet. So I'm just using a 1/4 teaspoon, so about half of a 1/4 teaspoon. That's my 1/8 teaspoon. And we are done. That, believe it or not, is the entire mixture for Shrimp Creole, at least for this version of it. And we'll see if this is a good version. I don't know. I'm just going to stir it in, and then I'm going to put it on the stove, bring it to a boil, and let it simmer, just like this, for about 8 to 10 minutes. And at that point, we'll be ready to put the shrimp in. So I'll get this on the stove. And I misspoke. You just bring it to a boil at this point. So I brought it to a boil, and I've taken it off the heat so I can show you the next step more easily. And once we put these in, then you put it back on for 8 to 10 minutes until the shrimp are cooked, but not overcooked. So what I've got here is 2 pounds of raw peeled shrimp. Actually, I bought them with the peels on, and then my wife helped me get the peels off. They were frozen, defrosted them carefully in some cold water, and then take the peels off. You don't want to get pre-cooked shrimp, or you're going to put it in here and they'll just turn into these little rubbery bites that won't taste good. They'll just get overcooked. So this is 2 pounds of 7190 shrimp, and my understanding is that the 7190, the numbers indicate approximately how many shrimp per pound you're going to get. So the bigger the number, the smaller the shrimp. The smaller the number, the bigger the shrimp. So these are 7190 shrimp. Oh, and here's another thing. When you peel these, do not put the peels down your disposal. I speak from sad experience. Don't put shrimp peels down the disposal. They go in the garbage. You put them down the disposal, this is going to become a very expensive dish because you will have to buy a new disposal. And also, just from other sad experience, never put potato peels down your disposal and never put rice down your disposal. These are all hard lessons I have learned. So, shrimp in, and we'll mix that up. And we're going to put it back on the heat for 8 to 10 minutes until the shrimp are cooked through, but not overcooked. So here it is. It's done. I probably simmered it for about 8 minutes. I tend to err on the side of less with shrimp because shrimp cook really fast. And how you know if it's done? You look at it, they kind of tighten up into a little spiral and they turn pink. And even with this dark red sauce, when you're stirring it, you can tell if there are some that are not finished. Now, one thing that's not in the recipe, but that I know from my personal experience I'm going to want, is something acidic in this. There's oil, there's flour, there's spices that we like, but there's nothing to kind of brighten it a bit. And one thing that I do with a lot of Louisiana cooking is at the end, after I cook it, I put in some citrus, some lemon juice or some lime juice. So I'm just gonna cut this lime, and this is my old antique lemon reamer. It's my favorite one. I got it at a secondhand shop. And I'm just gonna juice this lemon, and I'll put the whole lemon in. It just brightens it up, makes it feel a little less clodgy. I don't know if that's a word, but you kind of get the point, right? So we'll just put this in. I'm gonna grab a spoon here and hold back the seeds as best I can. We'll just, you know, if I had really been thinking, I probably would have just gotten my little wire mesh strainer, but hey, let's improvise. Yeah, I think that's probably about enough. Maybe not the whole lemon, but that's enough, and I don't want to get those seeds in there. So now I'm just going to stir that lemon juice in, and I put it in after I've taken it off the heat, because if I put it on while it's on the heat, that lemon flavor is just going to evaporate. It's too volatile, the oils are, they're just going to disappear. But you put it in off the heat, you're still going to lose some, but you'll have enough left over to actually have that brightness, that acidic bit to the dish. So there it is. This is Shrimp Creole. I don't know if you can see in there. Let me see. I'll grab the camera. You just hold on. You're going to go for a ride here. That's the finished dish. I know it doesn't look like much, but I promise you, it's going to be tasty. So I'll put you back here now and make sure I'm looking in the right place. There we go. Now, I've never made this version of it before, so I believe it's going to be tasty. I'm going to give it a shot. Now, once again, if I'd had any foresight, I would have cooked some rice and served this over just some white rice. But I didn't, and that's okay. I'm going to give this a shot. Look at that. Look at how yummy that is. I don't know if you can see. That looks good. So we'll give it a shot. Oh yeah. That's Louisiana cooking. Oh, that's good. That's what you want when you go to a Louisiana restaurant. You want those flavors. You want that deep, rich roux flavor. And all of the vegetables, they just kind of melt down. It's so complex, but it's not too spicy. In fact, if you left the cayenne out, you might not even notice it. But I think this is great. I'm impressed by the microwave roux method. I will probably keep that in my back pocket from now on. And I encourage you, give this a shot. You'll like it.